Hey guys, Stephen Marshall here from themanslife.com, and as promised, I'm following up with you on some thoughts I shared last week in a video. So if you have not seen last week's video, you need to check it out first. You need to click out of this, go to my Facebook page, scroll down, and you'll see last week's video. And in a nutshell, last week we talked about how using a Seth Godin quote, we talked about how people whose lives are broken, it's pretty obvious what they need to do to fix it. And they have great incentive to fix their lives, because if they don't, simply put, they're going to die or they're going to be absolutely miserable for the rest of their lives. But the challenge is for people whose lives they're not broken. They're what I'd call mediocre. They're just kind of average. You look at their lives and it's like, yeah, I mean, they're fine, whatever. No major problems, but nothing really that great either. Well, that's no way to live. I mean, none of us wants to look back at the end of our days and say, yeah, life was fine. We want to say that life was great. It was all that it could be. There's a fantastic quote. I don't know where it came from, but it's basically that nobody wants their tombstone to read, he checked email. Okay? He looked at Facebook. You know, we want our tombstones, our obituaries, to talk about fantastic stuff that we did, a life that mattered, a life that had meaning. But a lot of us, we're not on that track. And so we talked about in last week's video how, look, if we're stuck in mediocre, we've got to change something. Okay? We've got to make some changes. We can't keep doing what we've always done if we expect to get somewhere different. And I said I'd be back today talking about some particular changes that we might need to make. Now, everybody wants to hear, what should I do? Everybody wants somebody, some guru, some expert to come to us and look, just skip the details, skip all the philosophy, and just tell me what to do. And that would be really easy if we could all have some type of guru out there that had all the answers and that could say, do A, B, C, and D, and your life will be great. And there's just no one size fits all for greatness. There's no one size fits all for a life that matters and has meaning. But there are principles. And I do want to talk about some of those principles today. I wrote an ebook back at the first of 2017 called Manhood and the Hero's Journey. And the reason I wrote that ebook is because as I looked around, I noticed that men aren't very happy as a whole. They don't have a high level of satisfaction and contentment with their lives. And that's probably, to be quite honest, an understatement. Because if you look at statistics on men's happiness, they're as low as they've ever been. And then when you go beyond that and look at statistics on men's mental health, rates of depression, and especially rates of suicide, they're the highest they've ever been. As a gender, we are killing ourselves at a higher rate than we ever have before. That's alarming. And so the question is why? And I've got a theory or two. And part of it has to do with the fact that the things that make us men, okay, those innate characteristics and desires and traits, they're not needed in our society anymore. See, it used to be that if a man did not embrace his masculinity and develop his masculinity, those things that in my book I call the masculine virtues, then he wasn't going to make it as a man. He was probably going to die at a fairly young age. He would never be able to lead a family. But that's not so much the case anymore. And that's not necessarily a bad thing that society has evolved. I mean, I am certainly grateful that we live in a place that's where we can have comfort and we can have conveniences. Those aren't bad things. But here's the deal, and I've written about this a ton on the blog. You don't have to be strong as a man to navigate life anymore. You don't have to have courage as a man to navigate and be successful in life anymore. You don't have to be productive to navigate life anymore. You don't have to have skills. And you don't have to have relationships with other men. And because you don't have to have those things in order to get by, men simply have stopped developing those things in their lives. Those masculine virtues of strength, courage, productivity, and honor, and status among other men. And because we've stopped developing those things, we are not living in accordance with our nature. We're not living in accordance with our innate characteristics. And so we've got a disconnect there. And that disconnect is the cause of our dissatisfaction with life, our lack of contentment and meaning. So simply put, those are the changes that we need to make. If I were to say it in a sentence, I'd say men need to embrace and develop their masculinity. Now, what that means for you might be different than what it means for me. Okay? You might have tons of great friendships and be very connected to other men, while your neighbor has no friends and he's completely isolated. So the steps that you need to take might be different than the steps your neighbor needs to take or that I need to take. But here's what's true. Men need to be strong. Men need to develop courage. They need to be courageous. They need to be productive. They need to be able to get stuff done. Our society promotes consuming all things, especially information. Men need to be producers. Men need to get stuff done. And then men need to have honor among other men. When I look out at most guys, they don't have friends. They don't have other men that they are connected to. They might have a guy or two that they can watch a ball game with or go drinking with, but they don't have other men that they are connected with. And so what you get is guys who are alone, they're isolated, and they haven't developed their masculinity. And so they're not happy. They're not content. Even when, if you look from the outside, life might look okay. So as we're thinking about what changes need to be made in 2018 for us to get beyond a mediocre life and get onto a life that's great, a life that has meaning and purpose and value, think about those masculine virtues. Think about where you might need to embrace and develop your masculinity at a new level. As most of you know who've been paying attention to my work, I've created a new product, a new ebook that I'm going to release on January 1st called the Man Strong Blueprint. And basically it is a just under a 30,000 word ebook, about 83 pages, that lays out a strength training program and a nutritional program that if you follow it, it will make you strong and lean and muscular. No doubt about it. I'm going to be talking about that more as we get closer to the January 1st release of the book. And most people listening to this would benefit from it. Okay, it's fantastic, no doubt about it. But maybe not everybody. Like I said, there's no one-size-fits-all answer I can give you without knowing you. You might be the strongest dude around. You might already be lean and muscular. So the Man Strong Blueprint might not be for you. That might not be the change that you need to make in 2018. But for most people, it will be. But if your change is something different, you need to be thinking about that right now. What are tangible, concrete steps that I can take in 2018 that are different from what I did in 2017? That will develop those masculine virtues in my life. That's the takeaway from today. Have a great week. I'm not sure I'll talk to you before Christmas. Merry Christmas.